I really want to ensure that our stories are told because I really truly think it's a matter of our survival. I really think that we're here right now because of the horrific ways in which we've been dehumanized that have allowed for this moment. I don't think I'll rest until those stereotypes are no more and the world wakes up to really see us for who we are.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time zone you're living in, it's time for Sumud. All about humanity, so this right here for everyone. Uplift, amplify, empower everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time zone you're living in, it's time for Sumud.
Visit sumudpod.com to subscribe and connect with us on social media. Consider supporting our work through a contribution on the Support Us page.
On this episode of the Sumud Podcast, we uplift, empower, and amplify Cherien Dabis. Cherien is a trailblazing Palestinian-American filmmaker, writer, and actress who turns resistance into art. From Sundance premieres to an Emmy nomination, her work preserves memory, defies erasure, and reclaims identity. She doesn't just tell stories. She declares, we exist, we endure, and we will not be forgotten. Welcome, Cherien.
Thank you so much.
So my first question for you, when you were 14 years old, you told your father that you wanted to be a filmmaker. Looking back at that now, being born in Nebraska, growing up in Ohio, would you believe that you made it to where you are today?
Probably not. I think I would be really thrilled to know where I am right now. I think especially just to know that I'm telling the stories that I want to tell, that I'm, acting, directing, doing all parts of the process. Yeah, I think my younger self would be really excited and maybe in disbelief. When I said that to my dad, I think I was actually a little bit younger, but regardless, when I told him I wanted to be a filmmaker, what he said to me is, you can't be a filmmaker. You're Palestinian. No one's going to care what you have to say. And, it felt terribly harsh at the time to hear that. But of course, I know that my dad was really trying to protect me. And funny enough, I think he lit a fire in me when he said that because I just really wanted to prove him wrong. And some days I think I did. And some days I think he was right. Kind of depends on the day.
So he broke the golden rule, never tell a Palestinian they can't do something.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. But, maybe that was also partly his intention, a little bit of reverse psychology, knowing how determined I was.
Describe that experience growing up in Ohio, which I think was majority white, if I understood.
Yeah, I grew up in a really small town in the northwestern corner of Ohio, a town called Salina. And it was about 97% white, people of German background. We were one of a very small handful of immigrant families. So for the most part, we didn't really fit in, but we were fine. We weren't treated badly. We were kind of othered, maybe exoticized. My dad is a pediatrician. So, he was sort of like the doctor who saved so-and-so's life. But everything turned during the first Gulf War. It's really a story for me that was formative because I was 13 years old and, our friends and neighbors just turned on us. Suddenly we went from being, just your average immigrant family who kind of, for the most part, got by in this small town to just being terrorists, really treated as terrorists. My father lost maybe half of his patients, people who decided they wanted to boycott an Arab doctor. We received death threats on just about a daily basis, notes written in our mailbox, love it or leave it. We'll get Saddam and we'll get you too. My favorite part, though, was when the Secret Service came to my high school to investigate a rumor that my older sister threatened to kill the president. That was the fun part. My sister was a threat to me, but certainly not the president.
How did that even occur?
We didn't ever really find out, but I think what we kind of guessed happened was that someone called in an anonymous tip of some sort. My sister was 3.5 years older than me. During the first Gulf War, I was, incoming freshman, and she was a senior in high school, very outspoken in her history and government classes, and was always kind of giving the Arab perspective, whether it was defending Palestinians or defending the Iraqi people. And so I think someone probably didn't like it and called in some sort of, I don't know if it was maybe meant as more of a joke or whether it was meant to be, harmful. I don't think we'll ever really know. But I think the best part of the story was, when things like this happen, you really find out who your friends are. Like people came out of the woodwork to support us, which was amazing. And the principal of my high school would not let the Secret Service anywhere near my sister. And he said to them, if she's a threat, you can hold me personally responsible.
Wow.
What happened to us during the Gulf War actually inspired my first feature, Amreeka. That movie is about a Palestinian single mom who immigrates to the US with her teenage son and really has to contend with not just culture clash, but racism during the 2003 invasion of Iraq. So that story was really inspired by what happened to my family, even though what happened in real life was actually far worse than what happens in the film.
Did you do that on purpose, though? Did you have to subdue yourself a little bit?
It's really funny because the first drafts of that script, like I was truer to life, and people would read the script and go, this is not believable. And I'm like, that's what happened. But to put it all in a film contained within an hour and a half just felt like too much, kind of like hitting the audience over the head type of a thing, like we get it. So I had to really, I think it was more like a narrative decision than it was like me censoring anything. I definitely still said what I wanted to say in that film.
What did your family think about the movie?
The movie was like such a beautiful catharsis for my family. It was like a way to kind of look back at that time in our lives and go like, wow, that was wild. I can't believe we survived that. And kind of heal a little bit, like a way to look back at it after so many years and process it in a totally different way with the benefit of having distance. Seeing it portrayed was like a really kind of joyful experience. Like, look at what can come out of the hardship that we faced. Something really beautiful can come out of that. And this story of, a family persevering and surviving through their love for each other, I think was joyful for them to see and healing.
Were you journaling at any point when that was happening to you all? Did you just remember it and then put it into film, or did you journal and put things in writing and then later use it?
I wrote so much as a kid, but I don't know where any of that writing is. Like I started writing bad poetry at the age of 12, like most teenage girls, I don't know where any of that writing is, but what happened during that time was so formative. When you're 14 years old and you watch your parents or listen to them whispering at night about where to go because we're getting death threats. And one of the most popular girls in high school comes up to you one day and says, my brother may have to go to war because of you. You don't forget those kinds of things. And I think they really stayed with me. It was a political awakening. I really woke up in that moment in my life and thought, why on earth do people suddenly see us as a threat? Like, what is happening that is making them believe that we are somehow a threat? And I really became obsessed with that question. I became obsessed with trying to figure out why they would suddenly think my dad was a threat, why they would suddenly turn on us in this way when we'd been living in this town for 10 years. It wasn't like we just shown up. And as I sat with that question and went about my life, which included watching TV, film, and the news, the answer became apparent to me. I started to see it everywhere. I started to see the ways in which we Arabs are stereotyped in the news and the way in which that was impacting my family directly. Like it really became super clear to me. And I started really watching the news in a very critical way, like watching film and television in a much different way, really seeing stereotypes everywhere. And that was really when I chose to become a filmmaker, when I started to realize that those stereotypes were directly impacting us and that we weren't alone in that experience. Then I really became aware in that moment of the power of storytelling. And that was when I realized I wanted to do something about it.
So that was around 14-ish. But when you were 8 years old, that was the first time you visited Palestine.
That's right.
And can you describe that experience? Because you had that experience at 8, and then 6 years later, you're dealing with the Secret Service coming after your sister, which, by the way, I believe they probably have all of your writings somewhere. If you're wondering where it went, I'm sure they took
They
them.
have all of our writings. Yes, they have all my journals. You're right. Yeah. Is there someone I could reach out to get those back? Just a copy. You can keep the originals. Yeah, that's really funny. My first memory of visiting Palestine was when I was 8 years old. And my family was traveling from Jordan to the West Bank, which is where my dad is from. And we were stopped at the Allenby border crossing. Israeli soldiers held us there for 12 hours. And during that time, they went through all of the contents of our suitcases. They strip searched every single one of us, including my baby sisters, aged 3 and 1. And I just remember my dad's face burning with humiliation. And so he confronted the soldiers and they started screaming at him. And I was convinced that they were going to kill him. So that was really my first memory traveling to Palestine. And I remember distinctly thinking, oh, this is what it means to be Palestinian. Because prior to that moment, I was born and raised mostly in the US, traveling back and forth quite a bit to Jordan and the West Bank, but born and raised in the US. And my understanding of what it was to be Palestinian it was more intellectual, philosophical, and really as a kid, just emotional. It was just stories and experiences that I heard about what my family was going through in Palestine. My dad's cousin was assassinated on his doorstep in Brussels when I was 5. Like these kinds of stories that I heard as a child, not really understanding like why this was happening or what was happening, but just seeing the devastation that my parents would feel. And so, yeah, at 8 years old, I was really kind of left with this, this revelation of like, oh, now I understand what it means to be Palestinian. And that experience actually directly inspired my most recent feature film, All That's Left of You.
Yeah, which I want to get into because I know that was halted for a period of time. So I got to ask about your dad because I have daughters as well. I don't know how I would react. That's why I tell my wife, I don't know my reaction at that very moment when it comes to your daughters. Did he ever go back after that? Or did he say, you know what, this is not happening again?
He said, this is never happening again. And he went back alone.
Yeah.
And so I had to wait 20 years to go back to Palestine. And I went back on my own to make a short film. And that was the film that actually launched my career. When I was 28 years old, I had just graduated from Columbia's graduate film school, and I wrote a short film. I knew I wanted to go to Palestine and I wanted to go and work and do something there and try to, be useful in some way. So I wrote this short film to shoot there. And I went there for the first time in 20 years and the first time ever on my own, without my parents, without any family. I really didn't know many people there, including my relatives. I hadn't seen them since I was a kid. So it was a really amazing experience. I found myself just not only meeting family, like I had family showing up on the set of my short film going, we heard that Cherien Dabis is here shooting a movie, and then they would come up to me and I was just meeting family and I'd find myself like smoking shisha with them or having dinner with them. And it was like just really getting reacquainted with that side of who I am and really kind of connecting with Palestine on my own, like kind of forming my own relationship to Palestine. Whereas prior to that, my relationship to being Palestinian was really through my father and through my family. But now I was creating my own relationship through my work. So it was really a phenomenal kind of time. And like I said, the short film that I made, it's called Make a Wish. Yeah. It's Menna in Arabic. I spent a few months in Palestine shooting it mostly with, local crew, non-actors. I edited the entire thing myself, and then it went to Sundance, it went to Berlin. It won 2 awards at Clermont-Ferrand, which is like the Cannes of short film festivals. It won Best Short at the Dubai International Film Festival. And really is what enabled me to raise the money to make my first feature. And actually, I'm releasing the short film for free on YouTube this Saturday.
Yeah, we did see the Instagram post. I think the team shared it on social media as well. So
that's right. You did. Thank you so much for doing that.
We're looking forward to that. So when was the first time you picked up a camcorder that you can remember where you were documenting different stories, whether in Palestine or Jordan?
I love that question. I don't get asked that question very much, but I picked up a camcorder. I think I was first 12 years old. And my parents bought the family's first camcorder. And my mother just handed it to me because I was kind of like the handy person around the house. Anytime something broke, I would fix it, including like a little figurine. Like I would be the one super gluing it, like trying to, make it look like it did. And so my mom handed me the camcorder because she knew that I would read the manual. And of course I did. So I learned how to use it. She wanted me to document things like birthdays and Christmas. And I got really bored doing that. And so my way of making it fun was to tell people what to say and do on camera. And that was literally the beginning of my directing career, was like just me as a bossy preteen telling my mom and sisters and my dad what to say and do on camera. Not that they listened to me, by the way. They were a very tough crowd. But that turned into me writing little scripts and making short little films and videos with my sisters and my friends. Literally, I remember at one point, I was shooting a horror film with my friends in the cornfields of Ohio. And one of my friends who was supposed to be acting that she was possessed wasn't doing it the way that I wanted her to. So I fired her. I got her up out of the cornfield and I took her place and I showed her what I wanted her to do. And that was the beginning of my acting career. So it really all kind of happened as a way to entertain myself and my family and my friends. And, there's not a whole lot to do in small town Ohio. And so maybe in some ways that was a gift for my own, creativity.
Did you use it as a way to educate folks as well, to show them what the experience was like back home?
A little bit. It was interesting because I often say, like, growing up, I felt like a bit of a bridge. Like, literally, I felt like I had one foot in the US and one foot in the Arab world. We went back to Jordan almost every summer, and we would go for like 3 months at a time. So I had my family in Jordan asking me like what life was like in the US. And then I had like American friends, not really asking me, but more like assuming that they knew what life was like in Jordan. Like, we rode camels and, do you have telephones there? Like, got all kinds of questions. We would just be like, no, the jumbo jet lands in the middle of the desert. And then we take camels to our homes, to our tents. I got a lot of questions from both continents. I did kind of use my video footage to show people what life was like.
That's amazing. So I want to talk about Colombia, generally speaking, and how you feel about it.
Mhm.
But what hit me pretty hard was when you were working on a project, I believe, and your professor said, because it's an Arabic person, there has to be some sort of terror component to it. I couldn't believe a professor had the audacity to say that to you.
I don't even know that I remember his name, but it was my first year of film school. I was writing a very early iteration of Amreeka. And I was writing it from the point of view of myself. So like a teenage girl. And, the point of view and the script changed quite a bit over the first year of my being in film school and writing it. So when I first started to write it, it was like this teenage girl in high school during the first Gulf War contending with racism in like a small Midwestern town. And as I was like kind of plotting out the narrative, this professor suggested that I didn't even remember exactly what the suggestion was, but it was something so ridiculous. Like she plants a bomb in her locker or a bomb in someone's locker. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I was so shocked. I actually shelved the screenplay. I shelved the screenplay. And for a time, I didn't explore any Arab themed stories because I didn't feel safe doing it there. It wasn't until my second year that I took that script back off the shelf and started writing it in a different professor's class. And this person to this day is a mentor of mine, and she's amazing and wonderful. And she really helped me write that script. Her name was Catherine Diekman. I will never forget her because she's amazing. So, it was definitely insane. It was an insane suggestion, but not atypical, by the way.
Did you feel alone at that very moment? Did you feel insecure when the professor told you, put a bomb in there somewhere? What was that immediate visceral reaction?
Oh, I was livid. I was just outraged. I was
Okay.
completely outraged. I think I'm just reminded of my 14-year-old self realizing that people actually think we are violent. They think that we are some kind of a threat, that they have been so indoctrinated to believe that we want certain people dead, that we want to plant bombs in the West, like that all of us learned how to build bombs in the second grade. I think that there have been these moments in my life where I'm confronted with this shock that people actually think this of an entire group of people, and that I'm feeling and experiencing the direct result of that. And every time I think we've made some kind of a progress, I get some sort of proof that we've not. It's all like terribly disturbing.
Yeah. Clearly, Colombia hasn't changed, and that professor has to be in the mix, obviously, somewhere.
That professor is not, he became really ill and retired. So he's not there, but I'm not surprised by what's happening at Columbia. I'm really ashamed to say that I went there. I think that what is happening there is just inexcusable.
But it was a huge deal, I'm sure, to go to Columbia for film school, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was only one of two schools that I applied to, and I knew I wanted to come to New York. So it was just, Columbia and NYU. Columbia was actually my first choice. It's a really story strong school. They really emphasize story, and a lot of the filmmakers that I admired had gone there. So, it was a dream to go there. There was one disappointment after another being there. And I'm speaking politically. From an education point of view, I had some amazing professors and I really learned a lot. It was an amazing time because of some of the teachers and professors that I had and because of some of the peers that I met and, people I went to school with. And so it was life-changing, and it got me to where I am, I think, because I knew very little about film before going into film school, other than the, horror films I was making in the cornfields of Ohio. But I'm not surprised. Like, from a political point of view, there was always one disappointment after another, one disappointment after another. I remember when I went there, like, Edward Said was still teaching, and I was like so excited just to be at the same school as Edward Said.
Did you ever get to meet him?
I didn't.
Wow.
No, sadly, I didn't. I really wish I would have taken advantage of that when I could have.
Yeah. We had his daughter Nejla on the podcast a few months ago.
Yeah, I know Nejla. She's a friend.
Yeah. Have you visited Columbia recently, post October 7th?
Yes, I was up there once. I did a panel up at Barnard, and so I was up at Columbia Barnard for a day. But for the most part, I've been so focused. First, I was out of the country for almost 2 years making my film. And then when I returned, I was just super focused on finishing the film. And I was in and out of New York. We finished a lot of the film in Europe, in Paris and Berlin. And then I've just been traveling with it. So I've not really had the opportunity to kind of take part in everything that's been happening at Columbia. Otherwise, I would have. I mean, funny enough, they ask me to teach there every now and then. And they asked me to teach in the spring of last year when all of the encampments started at Columbia. And I couldn't do it because I was finishing shooting my film and I was abroad at the time. But I can't even imagine if I was able to do it and I had accepted that, I would have been a part of that whole thing.
Yeah. I'm sure you would have showed up with like Palestinian flags painted on your face.
Exactly. Wrapped in the flag.
So you talked about Make-A-Wish earlier. I have to ask, you had a lot of success where it appears to be very fast. You got a lot of attention because of that specific project. Did you kind of look around like, wow, this is not as hard as I thought? Or did you think that you got lucky, or was it a little bit of both?
It's a really good question. I don't know if I've thought about that before. I went to Palestine to shoot Make-A-Wish, and I labored over the story that I was going to tell with that film. I'll back up a little bit. When I graduated film school, I knew I wanted to make a short film in Palestine. And I kept thinking to myself, what story do I have the right to tell as a Palestinian who has lived in the diaspora my whole life? My father was exiled. So, I've lived outside of Palestine my whole life. I've visited, I've gotten windows into, what it's like to live in Palestine. But I've not lived under occupation myself. And so I labored over that question. And I finally settled on a story, a simple story of a girl who wants to buy a birthday cake and she doesn't have enough money and she's got to figure out how to make some money to buy this cake. And through that story, that simple story that all takes place in one day, I wanted to show a little bit of like the day in the life of a Palestinian kid. And I just decided I'm going to keep it simple and I'm going to tell a story that I feel like I have the ability to tell that isn't like, I didn't really want to tell a political story. I feel like we Palestinians have been so politicized, like from the moment we're born, that for me, it was just like, I wanted to just tell a human story. I went to Palestine and the entire journey of making the movie was so meaningful. Just being there, working, meeting people in Ramallah, which is where I shot the film, teaming up with producers there, like just randomly meeting people who would drive me around and show me Palestine. Like it was just so magical that I remember thinking the journey is the film. So much of what you put into the making of finds its way onto the screen. And I think that was the lesson for me. It was like the care with which I went about making that film And I wanted it to just mean something, and I wanted it to be authentic from me. And so I really questioned what story I had the ability to tell. And I think I just thought, like, okay, there was some level of authenticity and emotion there that resonated. And I think that was it. I think that was my only conclusion, was just like, keep doing that. Keep being meticulous about the story that you want to tell and about how to do it authentically and make the journey really meaningful. Like, the people that you bring together, they have the ability to really make or break the film in a way, because your experience of making the film is the film. It becomes the film. So in some ways, like, you really want to bring together a family and you want to do it with care and with love. And the moments where I've been able to do that, those moments translate. You feel the love that's put into the film, you feel on film.
Yeah. Did you have any panic attacks or anxiety? Because that's a lot of pressure. You're trying to shine a light on your people and you want to honor them and be committed to their whole story. So for me with the podcast, everybody will tell you, I always worry, are we doing the best thing for the person that we're interviewing? Because I want you all to shine, right? Everybody that we bring on. So I can't imagine now doing a film. That's a different ballgame altogether.
Yeah, it's a big undertaking. It's definitely a huge endeavor. What was really nice with the short, with Make-A-Wish, it was my first project. No one knew who I was. And in a way, that anonymity, it's safe,
Yeah.
right? Because there's no expectation. At the same time, I had raised grant money to go shoot the movie in Palestine. I was putting pressure on myself. But I was also enjoying just being there so much. It was just, let's see what happens. And what was so amazing was I edited that film, and within 1 week I had an edit and I showed it to a friend, and her emotional reaction made me go, oh, wow, I think this works. I was really excited. I think when I made my first feature, I felt so much anxiety. Suddenly I had so much more money. I felt like the money was sitting squarely on my shoulders. I felt so responsible for everyone who supported me and supported the film, whether financially or otherwise. They were supporting me in some way, and I wanted to make everyone proud. I felt a ton of anxiety at that point. And also because the short film was successful. So now I had been to Sundance and Berlin, and I'd won awards with this short. And I felt like people had their eyes on me as I made my first feature. So it was just like, I was super anxious. And then, of course, Amreeka was successful. And then that made me even more anxious for my second feature. The pressure is always really high, and this last feature, the budget goes up. The story was bigger, more epic, larger in scale. And I think that I just try to channel whatever anxiety I have into like a really clear intention for the film. And if I'm able to like really do that, then I could just stay the course. And that's kind of what I focus on. It's just like, let myself feel the anxiety and then try to channel that energy into like intention and something that can like benefit the film.
I'm not an expert here, but I would assume that you're sort of a different type of filmmaker because it feels like the majority of the projects that you're working on, you're putting a piece of you into it, a piece of your people into it, if you will. Where a lot of other filmmakers, it could be action or some sort of drama or comedy, that just something that they come up with, right?
Right.
That connection, how do you deal with that? Because again, that's a lot of pressure to kind of reconcile.
It is a lot of pressure, and my movies are definitely more personal. My first two films were really an exploration of identity and the identity crisis of, being a first generation Palestinian American. I wanted to really explore what that meant, not feeling American enough in the US. I always joke that I'm too Arab for the Americans and I'm too American for the Arabs. So I sort of kind of fell in between. And what that translated into for a lot of my life, especially my teenage years, was just kind of this identity crisis. Like, I don't really fit in anywhere, but yet I kind of pass anywhere.
Yeah.
I can speak Arabic enough to get by. Some people think I'm French with my name, Italian, Greek. The first two films were personal in that way. And then this third film that I just made is in some ways even more personal and a much larger exploration of not just my family, but my people and my ancestors. I think it makes one more vulnerable in a way, because you are really making work that's so close to your heart and that's really kind of revealing the deepest part of you, like the part of your soul that just wants everyone to be seen as equally human. Like, all of our lives are equally precious. And, here's the humanity of a people whose humanity the world won't allow you to see. Let's look at like how beautiful Palestinian culture is. Let's look at Palestinian love in this family. Let's watch this family survive decades of political turmoil. And let's look at their patience and their compassion. And, for 70 plus years, look at how unbelievably patient and compassionate this family has been over generations. I am a different kind of a filmmaker. I feel like my motivations are very different. And I, again, think back to my 14-year-old self, just really having a desire to represent and tell our side of the story and show a humanity that is just being suppressed by the Western mainstream media. And sadly, I still feel that. It was one thing to feel that at age 13, 14, but now all these years later, we're seeing what's happening in the world, and it's more urgent than ever that we put forth our humanity, that we show the world who we actually are because of the ways in which we're being so grossly maligned, dangerously maligned in media.
Yeah.
And I really believe that Western media and Hollywood are at least partially, if not more, responsible for where we are right now and for the violence that is just perpetuated against us with no impunity.
You're in the belly of the beast with your occupation, essentially, because they're so responsible for how they depict us in a negative way. So
Yeah.
the fact that you're in the middle of that fighting it, I appreciate it. But for the record, I would have probably retired after Make-A-Wish. I don't know if I would have been able
I'll
to
tell you
sing.
what, listen, I made a short and 3 features. I might be retiring now. Like, this film was so unbelievably challenging to make. And I don't mean to complain because it was also one of the best experiences of my life in that the movie is a gift. And I don't say that lightly. The movie is a gift because my crew and I came together to make it. I was in Palestine for 5 months prepping. My key crew came and we prepped together for 3 months on the ground in Palestine. And then the rest of my foreign crew came and we were working with local Palestinian crew on the ground. And we were 2 weeks away from shooting when we had to flee Palestine. After fleeing, like, we went into total crisis, financial, logistical, all of it. Like, I basically became the CEO of a sinking ship and was really just trying to figure out, how do we keep going? How do we keep ourselves afloat? And I found myself making a movie about what was happening as it was happening. But the part where the movie is a gift is that so many of us working on the film, of course, we're Palestinian. And even if we were, I had Tunisians and Lebanese, we threw ourselves, like, we poured ourselves into this film. The film became a container for our grief, for our love, for our compassion, for our outrage. And in that way, it was such a gift to be able to create during a time of unbelievable destruction. And we all felt it. Like, I had Palestinian crew say to me, "You saved my life. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have this movie to work on during this time."
Wow.
And the actors and I would talk about it. We didn't even feel like we were acting. We just felt like we were channeling. We're making a movie that dealt with so much grief while we're actually feeling so much grief. To be able to create something like that really was just such a gift. I felt this way even before, obviously, everything that happened most recently, because it's just been happening for, close to 80 years now. But I really feel like the movie, it's our origin story. It's the Palestinian origin story. It tells the story of how we got here, of what happened to the Palestinian people in 1948 to get us here. And it does so through one family, so that we see the impact of the last many decades over one family and how that impact or trauma has kind of been passed down from one generation to another. I really hope that the film has the power to be cathartic, to start healing conversations, to, like, really open people's hearts. Like, I really feel like the movie at this time in the world could really make a difference. It could really have a massive impact.
So talk about the name of the movie and why you chose it.
I wanted to find a title that felt meaningful in multiple ways. First of all, those are the movie titles that I like the most, or the ones that kind of speak to multiple meanings. But in this particular movie, there's a poetic thread throughout the film. So I was looking for a bit of a poetic title that could have multiple meanings. And, All That's Left of You speaks to what's left of a family after decades of survival. And it also speaks to what's left of Palestine after all of these years. I think that people may find other meanings in the title when they see the film. And I always like hearing what other people think, what other people think the title means.
Do you want to hear my thought?
Yeah.
I thought that it was all that's left of you as a filmmaker, and I felt like this would be your last one.
Really?
Yeah, I hope I'm wrong. I hope you keep going, but I felt like this is it for you. This is the big one, and this is all I have left that I'm giving you all.
Oh, that's sweet. I like that. Okay. I can go with that narrative just to get everyone to see the movie, and then I'll surprise everyone by coming out of retirement.
There you go. When does the movie formally come out? How do people watch it? And how do we support it?
Well, the first way to support it now would be to just follow me and the film on social media. I also began a production and distribution company called Visibility Films, which will be assisting with the release of the film in the US. Right now, the film is slated to come out in the fall. We're hoping late October. We don't have an exact release date yet, but we will be announcing it as soon as we have it. Yeah, I think just stay tuned via, social media. I'm announcing all of the different festivals that we're doing. We world premiered at Sundance, where the reception was just phenomenal. It was so emotional, and people were on their feet when the movie ended. It was a standing ovation. People were weeping throughout the film. And I just heard the most beautiful things afterwards, like stories that, really touched my heart. Like one man was like, I was crying so hard that the stranger standing next to me during the standing ovation turned to me and said, "Can I give you a hug?" And he found himself weeping in the arms of a stranger. And I just thought that was so beautiful. There was another person who came up to me afterwards, and he couldn't talk about the movie without crying. And he said to me, "I've called myself a Zionist, but I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't know." And he just kept saying, "I didn't know," and just crying. And I mean, these are really powerful, powerful reactions to a film. And I've never had this experience before. I've never had this level of an emotional experience with a film that I've made. So that was Sundance. That was our first festival. And then we did the San Francisco International Film Festival, where we won the jury award and the audience award. We're having our European premiere at Karlovy Vary in the Czech Republic in July. We're going to Shanghai and Sydney. And so I'm announcing a lot of festivals on social. The US release will be in the fall. There'll be other US film festivals as well before then.
How do we get it in DC?
Oh, yeah. We will definitely be releasing theatrically in DC.
Okay.
For
Beautiful.
sure.
So that story of that gentleman who was a Zionist, did that take you sort of full circle? Because I remember reading that when you were in some sort of screening room, you and a producer or a director who was a Zionist sort of went at it because he wasn't supportive of you being Palestinian, clearly. Did you feel like, wow, this is a full circle moment for you?
It's funny. I don't think I thought about that particular incident. I forgot about that. You've clearly done your research. Really
tried.
well done. But no, I got into it with a producer that I was working with, and literally it was like a screaming match. It turned into a screaming match, of course. It started out as a conversation. And, I was in my 20s back then. I think if I were to have that conversation now, I could have it much more calmly, let's just say. But it was the first time that I was really being confronted with someone who was really identified as a Zionist and was very much sharing her beliefs with me in a very aggressive way. I think I was more shocked by this person at Sundance coming up to me, and he was so vulnerable. I was really moved. I mean, he was really vulnerable. He was really admitting to me what he didn't know and almost apologetically doing so. And I just was so moved that he was so profoundly touched by the humanity in the film, that he was touched by the humanity of a Palestinian family and the compassion and the love. He was touched by these Palestinian characters. So I was just grateful. I just felt really grateful. And I hope that the movie can continue to have that powerful an impact.
And you had to move to Greece, was it, to film the rest of the movie?
We ended up moving to first Cyprus. So we shot a part of the movie in Cyprus, and then we went to Jordan, which is where we shot most of the film, actually in the Gaza refugee camp in the north of Jordan. 2 different refugee camps in the north, the Gaza refugee camp and the Suf Jarash refugee camp. And we worked with the locals in the camp on the film. It was really great to, get to kind of meet them. And a lot of them are extras and they helped us out, which was great. And then for our final chapter, we finished up our shoot in Greece. We shot in Athens and on Rhodes Island, in the medieval old city in Rhodes Island, dubbed very well for the old city of Jaffa. The 1948 part of the film takes place there. So the film takes place in different time periods, and 1948 is one of them.
This proves you're Palestinian, right? No matter what, that film was going to come out. It was going to get done.
It proves that I'm Palestinian?
Yeah, their resilience. You just kept fighting to make sure it got done, right?
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, serious question for you. What was a bigger moment for you? The Emmy nomination or that moment where your mom hugged you on stage and almost ripped your dress off?
My mom hugging me, that was so funny. I mean, it was the Cannes premiere of my first feature. And there was a standing ovation. I will never forget that moment. That was just unbelievable. She hugged me so tightly that the shoulders of my dress, like the shoulders just kind of came off. And literally the dress started to come off and I caught it in time. And, there's a balcony in the theater and people just went crazy with applause because they saw the whole thing. Like they saw me catch my own dress. And I just went from joy to humiliation so quickly. Like I was so embarrassed, but then back to joy because I was like, crisis averted. My clothes did not fall off. It was pretty funny.
Yeah. But talk about the Emmy nomination.
The Emmy nomination was also really, really special and surprising. Even though there were some whisperings of it, the episode that I did for Only Murders in the Building, I'm so proud of it. It really is really one of my favorite episodes of television that I've done, if not my very favorite. And I was very fortunate in that I was given a script that was special and different and was like, a little bit of what we call like a capsule episode of television where, as a director with capsule episodes, those episodes tend to deviate a little bit from the visual style of the rest of the show. So you, as a director, have the ability to kind of do whatever you want. You have a little bit more creative freedom to make it your own little film or your own kind of thing. And so those episodes often stand out. When they pitched me their idea for the episode, I was immediately like, I'm in, because they told me about the point of view of the deaf character and so much of what I want to do. So much of the episode just kind of aligned with who I am and what I want to do and kind of representing under and misrepresented groups. So I was very excited to direct that episode and just very proud of the work that we did. So that nomination was really a wonderful surprise.
First Palestinian to get a nomination, is that right?
First Palestinian to get an Emmy nomination.
How badass is that? Come on.
That was pretty badass. It's fun to be a first. It's not, it was fun.
So talk about some of the names that were in that show, though, that you produced.
The Only Murders in the Building?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I directed, I think, 6 episodes over 3 seasons and got to work with Steve Martin, who, made me laugh growing up. I've been watching him since I was a kid, so that was a dream. Martin Short, who's also hilarious. Selena Gomez. And then I think one of the biggest treats as well was getting to work with Meryl Streep in season 3. That was like, Meryl Streep is just incomparable, like one of my all-time favorite actors. So getting to meet her and work with her was, absolutely just remarkable. One of the highlights of my career thus far, I'll say.
Yeah. So is your dad still around, if you don't mind me asking?
He is, yeah.
If it were me, I would call him up and say, hey, look at me now. You said I couldn't do it and I'm here, right?
Well, I did ask him recently. I did say, hey, Dad, because a number of people have asked me about, I think I was 12 when I told him I wanted to be a filmmaker and, this happened. So I said, Dad, do you remember when I came up to you and I said, I want to be a filmmaker? Do you remember what you said to me? And he was like, no. And I said, you said, you can't be a filmmaker. You're Palestinian. No one will care what you have to say. And he laughed. And I said, so what do you think now? And he said, I think you're like your dad. You're really determined and you made it. Which was so sweet. Like, I didn't know how he would respond to that. I think I was a little worried that he'd say something like, still true, still true. But no, I thought it was really cute that he was like, I think you're like your dad and you're really determined. So he complimented himself in there.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's Palestinian dad. We have to compliment
Yeah,
ourselves.
exactly.
Yeah.
He's got to take the credit.
Yeah, of course. That's an ultimate sign of validation, though, coming from your dad, right?
Yeah, it is. It definitely
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as someone who didn't shy away from, has never shied away, and on the contrary, has really gone towards making films about the Palestinian experience, it's that much, I think, more gratifying.
I want to jump into Mo because if I don't ask you about Mo, everybody's going to get mad at me. But before that, May in the Summer, that transition from your first one, Amreeka, to this one, I thought was brilliant because you quite literally showed what I experienced living in America and then visiting in Palestine. I never fit in either, right? We're never enough of either. The
Right.
fact that you were able to close that loop for me, that was extremely powerful.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice to hear. I really do feel like my first two movies are kind of like a diptych. Like they sort of go together and they both explore like different sides of my identity. You know, the one is really the identity of being Arab in America and what that comes with. And then the other one is really like being the American in the Arab world and the good and the bad of that. And I feel like in some ways, yeah, those two movies sort of sum up my younger years and what was really on my mind during that time.
Did you get any criticism for that specific movie?
For May in the Summer?
Yeah.
You know, I think that people thought that movie didn't go as deeply as Emrika. I was trying to make a very different film. I didn't want to make Emrika Part 2. I was looking to really do something that would be like maybe more comedic and broadly appealing. And I think some people thought it was successful and some people didn't. You know, the reviews were positive but mixed. I'm really proud of it. You know, I think it was really fun to make. And it was the first time that I put myself in front of the camera as I was directing. And that was a massive leap forward for me. It's interesting because I realized if I'm not really challenged, I will get bored. And so I have to keep myself like not on the edge of the comfort zone, like really outside of my comfort zone. You know, in this third feature, it's completely Arabic language. So not only did I have to direct it in Arabic, I had to then act it in Arabic, which is my second language. It was even more to take on because it was also such a larger scale and the cast was so much bigger. Then we ended up shooting it all over the world during a time of total crisis.
Yeah.
So, you know, I had a lot to do. I never got bored.
Well, it makes sense now that I'm learning about you more, where you were in the cornfield with your friend who wasn't acting the way you wanted. So you fired her and took her place.
That's
Is
right.
that what happened with May in the Summer as well? Or
No, you know what's really funny? From the time that I was a kid, I wanted to be an actor. In fact, before I wanted to be a filmmaker, I wanted to be an actor. I would kind of watch film and television and I would just look at it and go, I want to do that. Like, I know I want to do that. But I didn't really know what that meant. You know, it was just like, I want to do something with this. And then when I realized that, you know, our story is nowhere to be found and we're being stereotyped in these really horrific ways, like I realized I wanted to be the storyteller. And that would include acting. But first, I really needed to learn how to be a storyteller.
Hmm.
And so I knew that the acting would come around at some point. I just didn't know when. And when I was casting May in the Summer, I got this feeling that I was going to have to do it. But I resisted that because I was so scared. I was super scared and was like, no, 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 no. And so I started casting for that role. And then at a certain point, I really faced my fear and was like, you have to do this. And you know deep down that you have to do this. And you know deep down that you want to do this. And you're doing everything to avoid that. You have to stop that. And so it just took me a while to kind of get there because my fear was really in the way. But I had trained, like I've taken acting classes every chance that I could from the time that I was in high school and college and post college as well. So it wasn't like I was coming at it cold, but definitely putting myself in my own film. Yeah, it felt like a risk, but you know, happily I ended up taking it.
Yeah, talk about anxiety.
Yeah,
Anxiety,
exactly.
Yeah. So talk about Mo a little bit. And I have to admit, when I noticed that you were in the TV show, I'm like, I know her, but it just didn't hit me. Then I eventually obviously looked it up and I'm like, got it. This makes more sense. So how cool was it for you to be a part of that whole project?
Oh, it was amazing. It was so much fun. I mean, Mo is, first of all, just like a phenomenal human being, like one of the biggest hearts I've ever met. And he's so funny. It was really, really a fun show to work on. I'll never forget when I first arrived on the set of season 1 because no one had told me how much Mo improvs. And I was literally in my first scene. We were shooting like, my character's first scene, and Mo just went off book. I was like, "Oh, that's what this is." And I just didn't know. I was like, "Can I interrupt him? Like, he's Mo. Like, he's the title character. Like, when do I jump in here?" And it took me just like a little while to get into the rhythm of that, because improv is not something I was that familiar with, but also I'm familiar enough with it to know that it really requires preparation. I kind of just needed permission from Mo to go like, "Hey, when you go off like that, do you just want me to let you go off until you're done, or can I interrupt you? Like, what are the rules of this improv? Like, you got to help me figure this out." You know what I mean? But it was like such a great challenge for me. Cause again, it just put me like really far out of my comfort zone to be like, all right, this is what I have to do. But what was so fun about it was that, like, I've always loved comedy. I've never thought of myself as being someone who was good at comedy. But then I made Amreeka, and I was sitting at the world premiere at Sundance, and there was so much laughter in the theater that I leaned over to my lead actress and I was like, "I didn't realize we made a comedy." And I was so joyful that people were laughing. I was like, I found it funny, but I didn't know if anyone else would find it funny. So then to get to do Mo and to get to like immerse myself in his world, which is all comedy, and get to watch him work on things like, comedic timing and like improv and just seeing how his mind works, it was just amazing. It was like, yeah, kind of exactly what I wanted and needed. And like the perfect antidote to my film. Because here I was making this film that's like really quite dramatic and serious. And then I had to take a break from making my own film to go to shoot season 2 of Mo. And it was just like perfect. I was like, okay, let me go and just immerse myself in like comedy and think about some lines, things that I might be able to improv in the world of this scene. It was, yeah, really a great challenge for me.
I would have assumed he was messing with you with the improv just to see how you react.
Yeah.
But so, did you realize how powerful or how much of an impact the show would have on the community?
I hoped that it would have that kind of an impact. Like, I wanted it to have that impact in season 1. I saw that impact in season 1, but didn't feel like it got as much visibility as it should have gotten. And the thing is, it's such a beautiful blend of heart and humor, and you feel that in the writing and you feel that like on set with Mo. The show is so much who he is. And so I was so happy in season 2 when it felt like the show kind of blew up and, it really went that extra distance that it didn't get to go in season 1. And that was amazing to see.
What was the most important moment for you in the whole TV show? Both seasons.
I think shooting the pond scene in season 2 was such a really, really beautiful moment. Like, it's really the moment that stands out the most. Mo was directing that episode, and he's such a sensitive person, so that makes him a really sensitive director. And we got to the set and we did the scene, and then Mo came up to me and he whispered to me, "I want you to think about everything that you went through in Palestine and then having to evacuate Palestine." I remember being surprised that I was like, "Oh, you want me to go there?
Mm.
Okay." And I didn't think I realized how heartfelt he wanted the scene to be. So I was like, "Oh, he wants me to go deep." Because I had told him the story of evacuating Palestine, and the most devastating part of having to evacuate was leaving behind my Palestinian crew. People who were so excited to work on the film, not knowing if we were going to get to return, not knowing if they were going to get to work with us, not even knowing if we were going to get to finish the film. Like, it was just so devastating after working with people on the ground for 5 months to then have to leave all of that behind and to also not know what was going to happen to them and to their families. Some of my crew had family in Gaza, and Mo knew all of that. So when he said that to me, I was like, okay. And so the scene just became what it is in the show now, and it went that much deeper. And after the take that we did that you see in the show, Mo was crying. The crew was crying, even though they didn't even understand what we were saying half the time. It was just like, it was just a really beautiful moment. And then Mo came up and we all like kind of hugged and cried on each other's shoulders. And it was like, again, it was like just one of those really cathartic moments because we've all been going through it. Like, so many of us on the set making that show together, we were all watching what's unfolding and just, again, felt like one of those really cathartic moments.
You had to kind of go into that mental space. How difficult was it for you to snap out of that? Because that's pretty deep. That's pretty emotional. There's a lot of trauma there. You're a professional. I'm assuming you can maybe just go in and out. I don't know, but that's hard to come back from.
Yeah, it can be in moments. It kind of depends on how far you go. It's funny because with Mo, one of the things that I've heard him saying that I love is that if I'm not laughing, I'm crying. And so I'd rather be laughing. And that's very much who Mo is. So, we'll cry for a moment and then he'll say something funny and we'll all be laughing. And that's exactly what happened in that moment, So he kind of snapped us right out of it. Like we were crying and then we were laughing. That's him. That's the show. Sometimes it's not too hard to kind of snap out of it. Sometimes you want to stay in it because you want to get there again. And so you just kind of, want to minimize talking to other people, or you just want to be able to go right away again, do another take and just kind of stay in that same emotional space. But for the most part, when I'm finished like shooting, I can snap out of it pretty quickly.
So just a few more questions. Do you realize that you're such a trailblazer, and do you realize how important you are to our community?
um, really appreciate you saying that. I don't know. I don't know. I really appreciate you saying that. I think that Amreeka was probably ahead of its time. And I think maybe my current film is as well. I don't know yet. I hope not. I think it's the perfect time for this film. But I also know we've never seen anything like this in Palestinian cinema. I'm just super excited to share it with the world. Being ahead of your time isn't always fun. It doesn't always mean great things for you and for your work. And so I think I try not to think about myself that way. But if I am, and if people do think of me that way, that's really meaningful to me and that touches me. I'm grateful to be thought of in that way among some people.
Yeah, many people. I think within our community, I think we have trouble verbalizing things sometimes. So I'm going to make sure that we do it on the podcast. So we appreciate you. I'm going to say it again. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the community very much, very much. I feel like this community is what has given me a career for sure. And the desire to represent this community and then the community giving back and supporting my work. So I'm very grateful.
What do you want your legacy to be 100 years from now? When people look back at Cherien?
I would be really surprised if 100 years from now, people look back and remember me. It'd be great.
I'll tell you what, 50 years from now, 40 years.
No, 50, 100, amazing. Yeah. With everything living on the internet these days is whew, that's a lot. Yeah. But I think it would be nice, if I was the first, if I was able to represent my community, if I was able to turn the tide of how we're seen in the world and how we're represented in media. That's really what I want. I really want to ensure that our stories are told because I really truly think it's a matter of our survival. And it's more the long-term game. There's so many people right now who are just overwhelmed with the need for humanitarian relief, understandably so. But I think I'm also really, really grateful to those who are giving to the storytellers to make sure that our stories are told, because that's the long game. And that will help ensure that this never happens again. Because like I said before, I really think that we're here right now because of the horrific ways in which we've been dehumanized that have allowed for this moment. I don't think I'll rest until that's done, until those stereotypes are no more and the world wakes up to really see us for who we are. That's really important to me. But ultimately, I think I really would like to be remembered as someone who just shone a light in the darkness, like someone who kind of made movies about love and humanity and compassion and who inspired those things.
You already are inspiring a new generation of filmmakers. Specifically women filmmakers. There are barriers that you have to go through that are much more difficult, right? Being Palestinian or being Arab or being Muslim is a whole nother level of challenge. What's your message for those individuals who aspire to be just like you?
Oh, it's such a good question, especially right now. I think that what I would say is that it's tremendously challenging. And we have to know that going in, but we also have to really remain steadfast in our belief in ourselves and in what we're doing. I'm a big believer in kind of setting an intention because I think the mind goes where it wants to go. But if you set an intention, then it gives the mind a direction. It really gives the mind a kind of focus and a destination to arrive at, and then really focusing in, honing in on that destination. And so I tend to do that. And then I just remain steadfast no matter what the obstacles are. And I think that, for us, there are many obstacles and they can be quite discouraging. But I think that what we have to do is learn how to turn those obstacles into opportunities, because every obstacle does present an opportunity. You have to find a way around it. And there's just no other option. So I think you have to really want it. And if you really want it, then you just have to remain steadfast. And you just have to keep going. And, look, you feel discouraged, you accept that, you allow yourself to feel discouraged. But yeah, I wouldn't indulge too much in that feeling. Kind of move on and, just keep plowing forward. Yeah, that's it, really. I feel like that's the biggest message. That, along with, one of the things that I've learned, the industry's changing and shifting so much right now. And anything kind of goes at the moment, to be honest. There's a lot of things that are happening within our industry that feel, again, I want to come back to this word discouraging.
Yeah.
But again, the fact that the bottom is falling out and, distribution is changing, studios, all of it is shifting. It really presents an opportunity for people. And I just learn about all of it, learn about the business side, learn about the distribution side, find out where the opportunities are, like take advantage of those opportunities, and just know that no doesn't really mean no in our industry. It just means not now, or not this person, maybe a different person at the company. There's always a way, and this whole industry is about relationships. So you just have to do what you can to build relationships within the industry.
I hope one day you are able to go back to Palestine and build a film school.
Oh, that would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Absolutely.
Any final words for the audience? Anything you'd like to say before we go?
Okay, last words. Honestly, I just come back to I'm so excited to share all that's left of you with the world and really with my community. I'm really curious. I really am dying to know what's going to be left of you after you see my film. I just really want to hear people's reactions to the films. I'm excited for that. And feel free to share them with me,
What I like to do, I don't know how this works, and we can take it offline, but I would like to do is if we could arrange some sort of showing at Busboys and Poets at some point.
Cool. Is that a venue in DC?
It's several venues. There are a lot of premieres there and things like that.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, I could talk about it. Yeah.
Before the film is theatrically released, we're planning on doing kind of a multi-city tour. So September, October would be a great time for something like that.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll help organize it. Yep.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I'm going to do hashtag all that's left of you, hashtag all that's left of me.
Amazing.
And people can share their stories.
There you go. Thank you so much, Cherien. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It was fun.
Listen, stay tuned, cause it's time for Sumud.